It's the Caleb Williams Show in Chicago. How are the Bears set up around him? We're examining the state of the Bears roster today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Joe, I have a non-Chicago Bears related talking point that I would like to visit with you.
Move forward with caution.
I want to make sure.
The Packers fans.
No, I don't want to hear about Packers fans.
They're very disappointed that we said something different at the beginning that wasn't about
5 minutes on a show that was 35 minminutes long talking about things that it's like, I went to the movie theater and they played previews for movies that weren't the movie that I came to see. Okay. Anyway, I stumbled across the timeline. It was from one of the jersey, uniform timelines, right? And was something along the lines of wanting the aura of the NHL to go back to the early 90s. Were you aware that there was a team as recently as 1995 that was the Quebec Nordiques?
Yeah, because I played NHL 95 on my Sega Genesis all the time.
I didn't. So I was not aware that they became the Colorado Avalanche and won the Stanley Cup the first year they moved out of Quebec to go to Colorado.
Yeah. This is the hay of my NHL fandom, is right what you're talking
95?
about. Yeah.
I had no idea that the Quebec Nordiques were even a thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at the standings, and they were right. All the Canucks, the Nordiques, the Winnipeg Jets, these were all really cool,
Montreal
style uniforms. Well, I guess Montreal, the thing about the Canadians is their uniform kit's always been the same since they're such original six.
You're talking about the evolution of NHL uniforms. Got you. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the Canucks stuff now is pretty sharp, but the early 90s stuff was ooh, that's early 90s. I dig it. And I just had no idea that the Quebec Nordiques were even a thing. And I guess it's just I'm hoping maybe Edmonton can end this Canadian Stanley Cup drought, because it has to be extra salt in the wound for Quebec to lose a team. And the first year they lose a team, that team wins the Stanley Cup.
No, go Panthers. Vamos Gatos.
Go Panthers.
Yeah. Is that tonight? Is it game 6?
No, it's tomorrow night. It's game 6.
All right.
But anyway, speaking of original 6 teams, Chicago Blackhawks, right? They were original 6. Is that correct?
I don't know. You're going to put that out there?
I'd be willing to bet that's not true. But
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this right now know that, and they're going to be like, oh, these guys didn't know if the Blackhawks were part of
the original 6.
All right, very good.
Teams that were from 1942 to 1967 were Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Montreal, New York Rangers, and Maple Leafs.
Wow.
So we nailed that. Original 6 franchise, Chicago Blackhawks, transitioning into the Chicago football franchise, the Chicago Bears. I got my Bears colors on behind me in the background.
Bear down. Welcome, Chicago Bears fans. It's your turn. We're putting you under the microscope. Every summer, Kyle and I, we like to go through the entire NFL, assess every roster, watch the tape, study the players, and put every player in a bucket. Those buckets being roster, cornerstone, quality starter, rookie, adequate level starter, replacement level, quality depth, non-roster caliber, incomplete evaluation, or a practice squad developmental player. Each position is weighted in terms of positional value. And at the end of this, we have a really good understanding of the distribution of talent across the league and how these rosters stack up. So we're going to show our work for you here today on the Chicago Bears, a team that has had a lot of resources through the draft, a lot of free agent dollars over the last couple of years. And it's all led to this moment where Caleb Williams steps in as the new franchise quarterback. And as we start this offensive conversation, knowing that we did do an entire episode really discussing about, specifically Caleb Williams and how Chicago's built around him in year one. Kyle, as you look at this roster, Bears offense, Caleb Williams, what stands out to you?
And just the supporting cast. And I know we talked about that yesterday with Minnesota, right off the bat. But to trade for Keenan Allen, to draft a top 10 pick in Rome Odunze, to go with DJ Moore and the player that he's become the last couple of years, it's just a really, really good situation for a guy in Caleb who wants to sling the ball around and wants to be aggressive and can off script make things happen to all levels of the field with his arm talent and the velocity that he's able to generate in the ball. So that's the thing that stands out to me the most is the field stretch ability with Keenan Allen and his route running to kind of be a middle of the field type presence with a lot of area and a lot of grass. And with the field stretch element, you expect you're going to get a lot of room from guys lifting the vertical roof off the defense. And Caleb, I know we've talked about kind of the, at least we did last summer, the paltry career single season best numbers for a Chicago Bears quarterback. And I think Caleb can push for some of those numbers this year.
Yeah, his skill plus the skill around him is a nice little recipe for production, man. DJ Moore's so good.
Yeah.
and he's been so quarterback proof as well. Even dating back to Maryland, if you remember his last season there was the only Big Ten receiver with 1,000 yards. And their top two quarterbacks got injured in the first 3 weeks of the season. He's doing third and fourth string quarterbacks. Then the Carolina situation, then Chicago. It doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. This guy produces, and he's such a do-everything guy, all levels of the field, vertical ability, yards after catch. I love everything about DJ Moore, and he's the 17th highest paid receiver in the league in terms of AAV. I mean, him at 20.6 per is just an absolute steal. And yeah, I mean, I think that is the appropriate place to start the conversation is you have legit answers at receiver. You're too deep with starting, Cole tight end, Cole Kmet with Geral Everett as a really nice complementary player. And then you just bring in Mercedes Lewis to add even more veteran leadership to your young offense in general. DeAndre Swift to go with Khalil Herbert. They're not messing around, dude. They got themselves some legit skill players, which to me puts the offensive line front and center. And I think they did a good job of between Ryan Bates and Coleman Shelton giving themselves a chance to upgrade that center position, which I think has been a little bit of a sore thumb through the last couple of years. They've been after
on from Cody Whitehair.
Yeah, I think they figured that out. And they've been after Ryan Bates for a couple. This is their second time pursuing him. They signed him to a restricted free agent deal a couple of years ago. The Bills matched it, and then they finally traded and got their guy. And so you could feel like that there's been a lot of intentionality. He's super athletic. He's a good football player. I think he'll help that. And Coleman Shelton is a depth player. For the offensive line, though, I'm looking for, all right, Tevin Jenkins, stay healthy. When you're healthy, you're awesome. We like that. Nate Davis, we got to bounce back, right? It wasn't a great debut season in Chicago. So looking for more of the Tennessee version of Nate Davis. And then just looking for continued growth from your young tackles and Darnell Wright, a top 10 pick last year, and Braxton Jones, who's become an answer for them at left tackle. Those are your young developing players. And I think that this offensive line looks really good. And I think where you get excited is I feel like every single one of those players, left to right, every single one of them has room for more. And how they come together, man, is it's exciting to think about because it's been an intentional effort to get this group together. And I think there's a pretty nice ceiling for them to develop into.
Yeah, they're kind of in that timeline window where all of the investments that they've made, a lot of those guys are going to start to really solidify and realize what they're capable of being. And I like the depth. I like the depth of the offensive line too, where you have Kieran Amagaje as a mid-round pick this year with Larry Borum, who kind of matches the same style And then you think about what Shane Waldron's offensive lines look like in Seattle, right? They really coveted size and power, and that's an extension of what a lot of this personnel group looks like for what Chicago has to offer with Jenkins and Davis and Wright and Bates, and maybe to a little bit lesser degree Coleman Shelton. I think that's maybe a player who is a better fit where he last was as compared to where he is now, but it probably going to be your utility interior offensive lineman that can play any of the three spots inside. And then you got Borum and Amagaje, who have some positional flex as far as what side of the offensive line that they play on. If they play, some people think Amagaje projects inside at guard, we play tackle at Yale. I think they got 8-9 guys they should feel really, really good about. And maybe they're not all Pro Bowl caliber players, but there's a lot of young guys that are going to be realizing their potential this year. And I think they should feel really good about their ability to get a good combination of 5 guys out there on the field.
They got some killers, man. Wright, Davis, Jenkins, big physical maulers. And then, the range of Ryan Bates is probably an element of what he brings. Very, very athletic. And so getting him out on some longer poles, asking him to get into space, that's something that he'll be able to bring to the table, which is important. You need those guys that can really anchor and hold at the point of attack to free up pullers. And I can kind of see the construction of this offensive line and what the intent is behind it. Kyle, I want to talk about Caleb Williams. Let's save that. For the last segment. Let's talk defense, Bears defense on the other side of it. So be sure to stick with us. Folks, the NFL schedule is here. Maybe you want to go see Caleb Williams as a rookie. Well, then download the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love the app for so many reasons. First of all, it's easy to navigate. They give you last-minute ticket specials. They give you flash deals. They give you a seat view so you can see exactly what to expect when you get to the venue. But my favorite thing, the all-in pricing. You can choose to look at the prices all in, and that tells you exactly what it's going to cost. No surprise processing fees coming at the end of the transaction that's going to shoot the cost of the tickets way up. You know the price from the outset. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
You want to talk about Caleb Williams, so let's talk about Caleb Williams.
Oh, you don't want to save it?
I thought you said save it for
segment 3. Talk
defense.
Okay. Yeah. But
we'll do the defense.
Now it's just weird. What do we do?
We're gonna do the defense first, and we're gonna make everybody wait until segment 3 to talk about the quarterback. I think you consider the background of the Bears coaching staff and look at where the strengths lie on the defensive side of the ball. You probably get really excited about this secondary, this back 7.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good. So I know we have our respective questions about all the young guys on the defensive interior, the depth on the edge. Those were questions we had last year, right? They came out and got Montez Sweat, and he was an absolute baller. Very quickly played up to kind of the investment that they made in him, and that gives you a little bit better feeling for having a guy to kind of be the takeover presence up front. But I look at Chicago and the defensive side of the ball, and I look at the back 7, and that's where I get really excited about what they have. A
lot of young talent. And established talent. Obviously, Jaylon Johnson, just an unbelievable season last year that he parlayed into a $19 million a year contract. That's now top of the corner market. Kyler Gordon's become your answer in the slot, and we figured that would take a little bit of time, and it did. But last year, I think he proved to everyone that he's the answer there. And then Tyrique Stevenson, as a rookie, getting a chance to start, really being a very good scheme fit, physical player. He got tested a ton, man. I think I looked and saw he was targeted like 110 times. That might have been towards the top of the league in terms of how much he was tested. And I think there's a lot of resiliency that he showed through that and a lot of high-level moments through all that opportunity. And how about Jaquan Brisker at safety? He's become an answer. He looks like a stud. Yeah. And then we'll see Kevin Byard's going to be the interesting piece here because, we all know the career that Kevin Byard's had as a ball hawk and really one of the best deep safeties in the league for a long time. But I don't think he's coming off of his best football, right? I think that's pretty evident based on what happened in Philadelphia. Can he kind of stabilize it? I think this is a better group potentially around him in totality with the back seven in Chicago, although it is another year older for him. I think expecting 4 or 5 years ago, Kevin Byard's probably too much, but can he kind of re-inspire us a little bit after a down year in 2023?
Well, he certainly, you would expect, has the kind of group around him.
Yeah.
For him to not have to do too much or have high expectations. I mean, you consider what Tennessee's situation was, and then you consider the corner situation in Philly last year. Should be a lot more complementary players around him to kind of have a role that takes advantage of his instincts, because he's been such an instinctive, impactful player for a long time, but doesn't stress him physically, which I think is where you probably foresee the most troubles at this stage in Kevin Byard's career. So you want to talk about the front?
Shout out Tremaine Edmunds and TJ Edwards let's get all the good things out of the way.
Well, it's a very high floor, high ceiling linebacker duo.
Yeah.
With Tremaine Edmunds and TJ Edwards, kind of contrasting styles a little bit. I like their depth with Jack Sanborn as a player who popped as a UDFA his first year out. They obviously liked what they saw, but didn't like what they saw enough to not spend $20+ million per year, or whatever the math ended up being for Edwards and Edmunds, right? Because Edmunds got 18 per.
Yeah.
And then I think Edwards got like 7 per when he signed. So they're really invested in that duo, and I think they have what they need there to be impactful run down and passing down type players. Tremaine Edmunds is the freaky athletic type, and Edwards is a little bit more the unheralded athlete, but a really good in traffic player and can get downhill. So you like having that foil of those two guys. And that kind of ties together everything that we talked about with the back seven for Chicago. But what happens in front of it is going to really determine what happens this season, I think, for the Bears.
I still don't love it, Kyle. We were very critical of this group last year, and I think nobody can refute the Montez Sweat trade and what it has turned into. At the time, I think it turned a lot of, eye rolls, and you thought, man, I don't know about this deal. Well, Montez Sweat proved him right away with how well he played in the contract. It all looks very good, but you still need a lot to come together here. And I think it starts with the 2 second-year defensive tackles in Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens. I think it's great that they both got a lot of opportunity to play as rookies, but they got to take a big-time step. And that's okay. I think you've seen a lot of defensive tackles take a little time to figure it out. It's a slower developing position. I don't think we always give it enough credit for that. And so very, very dynamic athletes, both of them, right? They have all the physical upside in the world, but kind of uneven players in college. And I think that continued during the rookie season. So I think with what you have invested there and the need that you have for them to emerge, like, to me, that's the X factor with this entire defense. What do you get out of those 2 young defensive tackles? Because Andrew Billings, I think, is a really rock solid A-gap defender, but he needs running mates. And this front is going to rotate. And on the interior, you need Dexter and Pickens to really take a big step.
Yeah. I think the other thing when I look at Chicago defensively as a whole, part of the way that season got jump started, they trade for Montez Sweat. They then proceed to have 14 turnovers in 4 games defensively. They had 28 turnovers on the season, and they got 14 in 4 games, like immediately after the trade deadline.
It's insane, yeah.
So, and that's 2 games against Detroit, a game against Josh Dobbs that kind of felt like the straw that broke the Josh Dobbs
the pass for not or whatever was going on. Yeah.
And then they played the Browns in that stretch. And then they got another 4 turnovers in week 17 against the Atlanta Falcons in a big win. So the turnovers came in bunches, but they largely came in the back half of the season. Can that continue with Montez Sweat? Is there enough other guys that are going to be ready to be consistent pressure generators up front to kind of play that high stress with consistency week in and week out. Because the fact that you got 16 turnovers in 6 games, and that includes a game in which you didn't get any when you beat the Cardinals, like that's great. But the sustainability of that, I think you have to look at the personnel and say, if it's going to come in bunches in the way that it did last year in the back half of the year, Montez Sweat's going to have to be the Montez Sweat that we saw after the trade deadline. And somebody else is going to have to step up in the front, because I think it can't just be a one guy show there defensively as far as rushing the passer. The second leading sack artist on this team was Justin Jones last year with 4. And he led the team in quarterback hits. So that for me is the big question. Who's the next guy that's going to step up?
They were plus 12 in turnover differential over the last 7 games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's so good. They very opportunistic on defense. They got to become a better third down and red zone defense. 29th third down defense, 31st red zone defense. So like situationally, that's got to turn around. And I think that starts with, to me, that's everything we're talking about. I think that's a defensive line stat where they're just not getting enough up front. And even at the other defensive end spot where I think DeMarcus Walker is like he's a fine
player.
If he's your third defensive end, it's great. But they're going to rotate. That's part of the philosophy here. And I'm a big Austin Booker fan. I thought that was a great trade that they made in the draft to get him. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a rookie. I mean, what do we know? Dom Robinson, Jacob Martin, not exciting, right? Like for guys that are going to play 20 to 30% of snaps. So we got to see this front, man. It's going to continue to be a big storyline until it doesn't have to be.
Who's still out there?
Well, we did this last year, and they signed Yannick Ngakoue.
Right, they got Ngakoue, and they didn't get the higher gun results that they probably hoped for. And Ngakoue signed like his third straight $10+ million 1-year deal, and he was okay, but it wasn't what you hoped it would be.
Was it Carl Lawson, Emmanuel Agba? I mean, those are the guys, right?
Yeah, Jerry Hughes.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. You should sign Jerry Hughes.
I'd like Jerry Hughes a lot.
And he knows that Eric Washington was probably with him for some of his time in Buffalo, so there should be some familiarity there.
Shaq Lawson.
Yes, sign him. And Eric Washington knows him well. He's been his D-line coach for the last several years.
And Marquise Haynes, if he's healthy, I think he's a nice player.
Yes, do it.
Charles Harris.
Sure.
The point being this, there's a lot of options for guys who maybe you're not over the moon, like, oh my God, we landed this guy. But when you have kind of this dearth of quality edge depth, you get a bunch of guys that are quality players. And if you're going to rotate them and play them in high volume, or not play them in high volume, but you're expected to go 110% on every snap that you're out there, go get 2 or 3 of these guys. Yep. Like I can't imagine they're going to be expensive guys at this point in the game. And it's going to give you a lot more reliable depth to kind of have wave after wave of guys that just rotate it.
You got room.
See them sign a couple of those guys.
You got cap space
out there.
Oh, Marcus Golden's a slam dunk. You got cap space. You got snaps available. Go get them.
Go get 2 edge guys in free agency, and we'll talk.
All right, let's talk about Caleb Williams and bring this conversation to a close right after this. So be sure to stick with us. Summertime means baseball, the Stanley Cup, and more. You can bet on all of it over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from football's futures to who's going to hit one out of the park. You got some fun Bear stuff you can check out. How about Caleb Williams, plus 125 to be the offensive rookie of the year? That's the best odds of any player. They have the Bears over-under for wins set at 8.5. So you see 9-10 wins coming from the Bears. Go get in on that. How about this one? The Bears at minus 120 to make the playoffs. So if you think they break through in the NFC, definitely get in on that one. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So, Caleb, rookie quarterback, fresh out of the institution known as the NCAA, and I do feel obligated to ask you. We're almost a month. I think we're a month away from the release.
No chance
Of NCAA 25. Any chance?
No, I mean,
Any chance we do an online dynasty together? That'd be fun.
Brother, okay, there's so many things working against this idea, and I'm not. There's so many leading factors. Time being one of them. I don't have a game. I don't have a game box.
Box. Sorry, Belichick. Chill out.
Hey, careful, Bill.
We didn't say Facebook. We just said game box.
Listen. I can't do it. I cannot do it. I want to read more. I want to, you know what I mean? I want to sleep more.
You could read defenses on NCAA 25 on your television screen.
I can't do it.
All right. Let me know if everybody in the comments, let us know if you want us to do an NCAA online dynasty.
Somebody gonna come watch my kids so I can play it.
Caleb Williams, go ahead.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Everything about this is fascinating. The number one pick, how they got the number one pick, the career that Caleb Williams had at USC, and how dynamic he is, and how he has access to the whole field, and he can really run and improvise and do some really incredible things. To stepping into this situation with this supporting cast for this franchise, it's never had dynamic quarterback play with any level of consistency. It's fascinating. And what I think is going to be the most critical factor for Caleb Williams is finding the balance of running the offense and then appropriately sprinkling in all that extra stuff that makes you such a dynamic, instinctive playmaker. I think that's where he's going to have to figure it out, right? And I feel like the environment is correct for him to do it. It's like, can he calibrate his style of play to thread that needle effectively? I think that's going to define Caleb Williams.
I think there's probably going to be some early growing pains, and that's every young quarterback when they come in, especially one that is as aggressive as Caleb was at times. I don't think we acknowledge enough, and I'm sure Bears fans have heard this before, so maybe this will be one of the things that Packers fans think we get wrong about Chicago, since we got so much wrong about the Packers, apparently. For playing at USC last year, Caleb's supporting cast was kind of bad. they didn't really have a lot of talent that you felt really good about. And I think that's the thing that I'm most hopeful for Caleb is you step into one of the best skill groups in the NFL from day one. That should make your life easier. Now, just don't learn how to fly not too close to the sun and make the kinds of mistakes that might cost you football games that you maybe get early in the season for Chicago as Caleb tries to figure that out. That'll be the big thing for them offensively that I think is going to go a long way in determining what kind of season they ultimately have this year.
Have you ever seen a schedule lay out like the Bears does?
Just pulling it up.
Kyle, this is, it is just, we're going to be at home for a long time. Then we're going to go on the road for a long time. And we're going to go, this is bizarre.
Okay. So we are at Houston, at Indy.
You start off 2 in a row on the road.
Yep. Rams, Panthers, and Jags all at home. No, because that one before the bye is an international game because it kicks off at 9:30 a.m.
I got to pull up a different source. I don't like the way this is.
Pro Football Reference is the way to go.
No, this is Pro Football Reference has got it wrong. They start at home against Tennessee. I'm not looking at Pro Football Reference ever again for a schedule. This is
PlayOutPredictors.com.
I went to ESPN's schedule. This is insane. They start at home against Tennessee. Then
Packers fans will be glad to let us know we got
we got something wrong. They'll be thrilled about it. To Houston and Indy, back home for LA and Carolina. Then you go to Jacksonville for a home game, but it's really a home game for Jacksonville. Let's be honest about it. Right? That's what they're going to do.
With how much they play.
I think they're doing back-to-back weeks again in Jacksonville. Are they going to get them in the second game? No, so this is the first one. They get the Patriots get Jacksonville on their second week in London back-to-back. This is absolutely asinine. 3 in a row at home, 3 on the road, in a row on the road, 2 at home.
Yeah, they kind of come in chunks, huh?
Yeah. get comfortable. Either get comfortable in a plane or get comfortable staying at home. It's a strange schedule.
A lot of division stuff in the back 6-7 weeks too.
Tons of it.
Your
non-division games are San Francisco and Seattle.
Yeah, from week 11 onwards, right?
Dude, that's insane as well. It's all division games.
That's a very intense close to the season from week 11 onward.
Right, like the NFC North is not going to be settled very quickly. I can tell you that.
So if you're looking at what they have early, as far as we've talked about the growing pains potential, I think you like that you catch Indy early with all of their kind of inexperience at corner, kind of their unsettledness there. I think that you like that you catch Tennessee in week 1.
Oh, no
given
doubt.
all the new that's there for the Titans.
No doubt.
I think you like that you catch the Rams at home for a team that has as much youth as they have now, playing without Aaron Donald. I think you like that you catch Carolina early. So I think you can look at probably 4 out of the first 5 games and say, hey, there's a storyline here that I think is pretty favorable for Chicago.
Getting the Patriots as your other AFC opponent.
Right.
Yeah. Some good here for sure.
Yep. It'll be interesting. You said the win total for them was 8.5?
8.5.
Chance they go over that. All depends on what the rest of that defensive line performance looks like and how quickly Caleb gets it rolling. That'll determine it. But that is going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to put all the position rooms in the NFC North into tiers. We're going to rank them 1 through 4 with how we perceive them. We're looking forward to that. We hope you are as well. You can come back and see us. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here.